Thank you very much, Father Goswell. Happy to be here.
Good.
Hopefully, we can have a very interactive session.
I hope so too. Do you mind
Yeah.
telling us about yourself a little bit so that our audience would understand who you are and what to expect?
Okay. So, just like you said, I'm a Nigerian realtor here based in Abuja, and I've been privileged to be part of a lot of transactions and also facilitate a lot of transactions as well. From building to property management to leasing and to short lets. And I'm grateful for the privilege. This has been 5 years for me, 2 years, practicing and learning under someone, and 3 years full time on my own. So I'm really grateful for the successes so far and the lessons learned. Yeah.
Very good. You're a lawyer, right?
Yes, I am. I'm a lawyer.
You study real estate law or something?
No, I studied general law, but property law for me has been a niche of which I have always known that this is what I wanted to do, and I ventured into it. I was fortunate to have a mentor who I learned under, and he groomed me from when I started to now. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
When did you switch from, legal practice or, another aspect of legal practice to real estate? When did you make that switch?
I made that switch in 2021, and that was because a client reached out to me concerning a project they wanted to go into, and I discovered that I had no knowledge, I lost the brief, but I really wanted to learn something, to get to know that aspect of it, and I it's that hunger grew my interest, of which I had to look for someone who I would, be under the authority to learn under. And I was fortunate to do that. And, practice has taken me to Abia State, practice has taken me to Owerri, practice has taken me to Lagos and down to Abuja, of which, it has been a long ride and also an eventful one with a lot of lessons learned.
Fantastic. So you received some real estate training or just informal mentorship under your boss, or do you have
I would
certifications
say
in real estate?
yes. So I would say I just had a bit of formal from every law student undergoes property and law classes, but that's not the whole of it. That's a branch of it. So for me, it was informal practice and also informal experience. That give me the knowledge I have, because when you have to work under your mentor, you learn everything, both the practical aspect. You have to go back to take courses and trainings to learn from. We have retreats, twice every year, just so that we continue relearning and unlearning some of the things we know. Walking through those emerging trends in the real estate industry. So for me, I would say both a bit of formal and majorly informal learning. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So the Ethics Compass program focuses more on professional ethics, as well as on business ethics, So we're trying to figure out what is ethical in every profession. And today here we are talking about the ethics of real estate, realtors, how should they practice real estate business and
Yeah.
what they should and what they should not do. So that was why I was asking whether you had some formal training in the business and whether there is even a formal training or an association or some kind of organized code of ethics for realtors in Nigeria. Is there anything like that? Are you aware of?
Um, I would say yes and no. The reason is because what we have on ground it's not generally, sectioned towards realtors. It's sectioned towards real estate developers, right? That's why we have the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria. So we don't really have, the code of professional ethics for realtors. So that angle is porous. There's a wide gap in between it, because most of the code of conduct we have for real estate developers do not really center on what you know what the general, duties and responsibilities of realtors are currently right now. So I would say yes and no. Not to dispute real estate developers. They are also realtors, but that's a different angle from the aspects where realtors focus on, because realtors are intermediaries between the buyers and the sellers, the owners of the estate and clients that come. So they usually facilitate the buying, the selling, the leasing, ensuring that those processes in which a client would have to purchase their dream home, their dream apartment or their dream office, is ensured. So I think for developers, and realtors, there are two, the code of conduct for real estate developers are in a way streamlined to just developers and not to realtors.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we're talking to Nigerians here, and many
Yeah.
common Nigerians would view this
Yeah.
now that they're online now, or they'll view it later because this remains on our page and we have a large following. And just to be sure we are in touch with Nigerians, sometimes
Yeah.
we speak this big grammar, realtors, real estate. So are you people different from the common people, from the people that Nigeria know as agents?
Um, I would definitely say yes. I would definitely say yes. This is because realtors are professionals. They are professionals in the real estate business. When I mean professionals, they have responsibilities, they have roles they need to fulfill. They have communications that they make with their clients. They have certain standards they follow and they keep to. So I would say realtors are completely different from agents. Agents are, they are unregulated and unlicensed, people who venture into the business. But realtors are licensed and they are also regulated professionals who keep to certain ethical standards, paramount to their profession.
Okay, so yeah, but you do the same thing that they do. I mean, if somebody wants to rent an apartment in Abuja, you can handle that, right?
The difference is this, there are for realtors who are professionals, there are certain processes and standards which they keep to, and these are standards and behaviors that anyone who is an agent would not clearly do. You can just meet an agent on the road, tell him, look, I'm looking for a house in this area. This is what I want. This is how much I'm willing to pay, and they can get you anything. Do you understand? But for professional realtors, we listen to you, we communicate to tell you, look, this is what the market is right now. If you put out this property, this is how much you can gain. We give you professional advice. We facilitate documentations. We ensure that we bring other professionals into the transaction to help you, ensure that your property is sold and give you, premium satisfaction. So the satisfaction that a realtor will give to a client is completely different from what an agent would do. An agent is just there for his, profession, for his financial gain, to sell out your property and give you the returns that you require. But afterwards, what happens? What happens to the maintenance? What happens to ensuring, doing due diligence on the clients before the house is being rented or sold? So that's what we realtors do as a profession. So we go through those processes before transactions are done.
Okay, thank you so much. Rejoice, are you there, Rejoice? Are you there, Rejoice? Can we see your face if you're there? Rejoice, if you're there, can we see your face? Okay, so Victory, we continue with you while we wait for Rejoice. But I want us to be clear about this because you've mentioned three things here, and I don't want Nigerians to be confused. We've talked about real estate developers. We talked about agents. Whether we like it or not, agents are in the business of some kind of helping people access properties. And then you have talked about real estate, realtors. I want you to be clear about this. I want you to distinguish, uh, I mean, distinguish these roles, these groups of people. right? So that we know who we're dealing with. Because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I know that an average Nigerian deals more with the people we call agents. And whether they are professional or unprofessional is a market that has come to stand. I mean, it's just like going to the bank to change money and going to Amawasa to change money too. Those places have come to stand, but this is an opportunity for us to clarify things and so that Nigerians would understand the differences in all these things, because the real estate market is quite large. So that's also an opportunity for you to, if you tell us also if there are other professionals in the market apart from the three you have just mentioned.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. So, real estate developers are organizations or persons who engage in facilitating and building, either luxury homes, low cost houses, affordable homes for people to live in. So they walk through the process of securing the land, building the properties, and all that, and putting them out in the market. These are what real estate developers do. They help you. They develop properties suitable for living. You know. Now down to agents. So agents are unregulated, unlicensed. They can be anybody, who you give authority to, either written or unwritten, that's, I mean, documented or undocumented, to sell a property, to engage in a tenancy or a lease on your behalf, right? These people are unregulated and they are unlicensed professionals. They do not have the in-depth knowledge of the real estate business. They are just handed the authority to sell a particular property. They are given the mandate to ensure that a particular property is sold between a time frame at a certain amount. They go with the instructions that the clients give them. They don't offer any other understanding or knowledge as to what the business is about. So this is the difference between real estate developers and agents. Now, for realtors are intermediaries between property buyers and sellers, landlords and tenants. They are usually involved in the various aspects of real estate, which includes, buying, selling, leasing, managing and valuing properties. And, they often have in-depth knowledge of the real estate market. They are they inform you of current trends, investment opportunities, legal requirements, financial considerations relating to that property transaction, and they are skilled in negotiation. They are skilled in property valuation. They understand the needs of both the buyer and the seller. They are that intermediary between the buyer and the seller, or the landlord and the tenant.
Okay, so how about those that sell lands? Who are they?
So those who sell lands can either be realtors or agents. You can give anybody the authority through a power of attorney to sell a particular land on your behalf. You can, and the person will sell it at the rate you require, or give it to a person whom they feel is the highest bidder. For realtors, can also be, persons who sell properties or lands. This is because we deal in the different aspects, whether you're buying a property, you are selling a land, or you are acquiring an estate, or you are into shortlets, you are into, tenancies, you are into service apartments. This is what real estate realtors do. They engage in these different aspects with the in-depth knowledge of, you know, um, of these different aspects. But for agents who sell land, they are just people who are given the mandates by the owners of these properties to sell them at a particular rate which they require, and as at a particular person who they have introduced to the buyer to be the seller of the property. So
Okay,
they necessarily don't they
okay.
necessarily
Thank you so much. So, I mean, the distinction is very clear. So, probably in the real estate market, we have realtors and estate developers. Agents try to mimic the work of realtors because the realtors and the agents do the same thing, but you are saying that agents are probably unlicensed realtors And in ideal situation, they shouldn't operate. Those that should operate are realtors. And if I heard you very well, you mentioned that agents do not have licenses to practice as realtors, but realtors have licenses. So, for example, your firm now is licensed to practice as a realtor in Abuja or across the country. Is that correct?
Um,
You're muted. You're muted. You're
oh,
muted.
I'm sorry. We are certified by the Real Estate Development Association of Nigeria to practice in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes.
And of course, your company is registered, as a
Yes,
registered company in
of
Nigeria.
course. Of
So
course.
you have Real Estate Developers Association in Nigeria, and you guys know that the agents are quote unquote quack realtors.
Yeah.
And don't you guys think that they are spoiling business for you and bringing bad name to the real estate industry? And if there is a Real Estate Developers Association in Nigeria, do they have code of ethics? And what do you think they are doing about the agents that are spoiling the business in the real estate market?
All right. Thank you very much. So I would say that the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria has since 2002 been working assiduously to ensure that the system is regulated. But there, there are several challenges. The market is porous. We have, cultural practices that have stemmed as challenges to the business so far. The dynamics of the market, the real estate market, and social and economic pressures that has led unlicensed and unregulated persons into the business. Make no mistake, change is something that over time, has to happen, and it's a work in progress. I think the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria has done a lot, for real estate development. But I think there's still a lot more to do. A lot more to do in the sense that, our code of conduct do not really, encompass holistically on what realtors do. They are majorly centered on real estate developers and not the realtors themselves. So that's why we are working to see that we have a code of conduct professionally for realtors, who are licensed to operate in Nigeria and carry out transactions according to the ethical standards of the association. So I would honestly say that because of how porous the system is and how wide the market is, that's why we have these, challenges, getting a proper, codified standard of ethics for real estate professionals in Nigeria. But be that as it may, the association is working towards, getting, our ethics and standard codified so that we can have a working document for every realtor in Nigeria.
But you say you have a code, at least you have something in hand. Have you seen one yourself?
Yes, we have a code of conduct for members of the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria. That's why I said it doesn't encompass, holistically what realtors do. It just centers on what real estate developers do and not what realtors do.
Okay.
I can, yeah.
Okay. Well, I will be happy to see. I mean, that should be a public document. So if you can share that
Yes,
document,
yes, it is. It is
one of
a
the things.
public document.
Yeah. So
I
okay.
think I can project that afterwards, if you don't mind.
We can look at that together. I saw Rejoice here. Is he still with us? Maybe he can jump in here and say a few things. Rejoice, are you there? Okay, can you unmute, please? Unmute, Rejoice.
Good afternoon, Reverend Father. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. I want to apologize for coming in late. I had a work emergency outside the office, but I was in the session when it started, only that I couldn't talk where I was. I'm so sorry, but now I'm in fully.
Okay, thank you so much. Before you joined us, we were talking about the various sectors in the real estate market, and Victory had mentioned two sectors, uh, and the third one that is a quack sector. She talks about the real estate developers, and then she talked about the realtors, and she has, brilliantly distinguished both, but emphasizing that the agents are not realtors; they are just quack people, they are not professional. And so what do you have to say about this? Where do the agents belong in the real estate market?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Let me begin by saying that my learned colleague Victory has spoken well, but I want to emphasize that the practice of real estate agency in Nigeria is used to be an exclusive preserve of an institution called the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, NIESV. This institute is governed by an act of parliament, and they were set up to regulate the practice of estate agency and property business in Nigeria. However, with the advent of real estate network marketing, which is one area I will be focusing on today, real estate network marketing came in to decentralize the practice of real estate agency in Nigeria. And this threw up the industry to all manner of people. So whether you're educated, you are not educated, you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, whoever you are, real estate has now been opened up to the general public to practice as agents. Now, to distinguish between who a realtor is and who a real estate agent is, I think the lines are actually blurred. Because even when we say realtors are licensed real estate agents, there is no centralized authority, there is no centralized institution that has been empowered by maybe an act of parliament or the law of a state to license real estate agents to become realtors. The only place where this is in existence, where the practice of real estate is a bit regulated by the government, is in Lagos State. In Lagos State, there is an organization, an establishment called the Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Authority, LASFERA. This LASFERA was set up by the laws of Lagos State, and they are empowered to regulate the practice of real estate both by developers and even by agents. So what the LASFERA does is that as a realtor or as a real estate agent, you must be licensed by the LASFERA to be able to practice real estate in Lagos State. So whether you're an agent, you are renting an apartment, or you are selling lands, either directly or on behalf of a company, which is what the real estate network marketing industry is all about, where companies, real estate companies, have their own pool of marketers, in-house marketers or independent marketers who sell their properties to the public and they earn commission in return. So as it is right now in the Nigerian real estate landscape, Lagos State is about the only state that properly regulates the practice of real estate. But for the flip side of the coin, where you have those who write on the wall, this house is for rent, or this is not for sale. You know all of those informal people who actually practice real estate. They cannot be referred to as realtors. So generally, I would say that the percentage of those who are practicing real estate in Nigeria who are licensed is really, really very low. We might not have available statistics to justify that, but we do know that there is, number one, there's no central organization or institute that regulates or licenses real estate practitioners in Nigeria, apart from RIDAN, which my learned colleague spoke about. RIDAN regulates real estate developers, and then in proxy, regulates their agents, those who sell for them. There is also the NIESV, which I spoke about, but those have to be estate surveyors and valuers who have actually gone to a university to read or to study estate management. These are those who get any NIESV license to practice as estate agents. And the final one I'll talk about is the Association of Estate Agents in Nigeria, AEAN. It's an association that is affiliated to the NIESV, and their mandate is to assist the Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers to regulate the activities of real estate practitioners within the industry.
Okay, thank you so much. Fantastic, very good history there. And we are getting things clearer. And here at Ethics Compass, we try to deal with issues that Nigerians are dealing with every day. And you all know that the issue of agents and people renting properties, buying lands, buying houses, it has really gotten out of hand in the country. There's no regulation. There's no, people have lost money. Agents are putting any amount of money they want in anything. There's no order. There's just everybody's just doing their own thing. And I feel bad for those of you who are professionals, who are practicing, then these agents making everybody then look like, it's just a free-for-all kind of business. But thank God that a state in Nigeria has done something fantastic, Lagos. And I was wondering why other states have not followed the example of Lagos State. Rejoice, I don't know where you are, whether you are in Owerri or you are, I don't know where you practice. Do you practice?
I'm based in Delta State. I used to be in Lagos.
In Delta States, yes. So good. Lagos has done something fantastic. And I was wondering why other states have not followed suit. And I'm sure that somebody started it in Lagos and eventually they had something. I'm not saying it's perfect over there, but at least they have a regulatory agency, and that provides an opportunity for citizens to even know where to lay their complaints or anything. And so before you joined, Victory said, oh, the association is doing something to... So is there anything, I'm sure you guys have had the complaints of Nigerians about how bad the real estate market is, how agents are dealing with people and doing many unethical practices. So is there anything that, let's say, your group in Delta, is there anything you guys are doing about trying to see how the market can be organized and how these agents can be checked and how we can have a decent market where somebody can easily go in? I mean, there are sectors in Nigeria that are quite organized, and I don't see why this cannot happen. What efforts are underway? It's just there's nothing being done about it, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Thank you, sir. Let me go back to Lagos as a case study. In the year 2016, the Lagos State government enacted the Lagos State Properties Protection Law. And the fallout of this legislation was the conversion of, and it used to be Lagos State Real Estate Transaction Department. It used to be a department under the office of the governor. But after the enactment of that law in Lagos State Property Protection Law 2016, the last rectored, the department was upgraded to the full status of an agency, which is the Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Authority. And what we see after that legislation was the sanitization and organization of the industry, the real estate industry in Lagos. There was a definite, there is still a definite authority that has now been fully saddled with the responsibility of regulating the activities of practitioners in the industry. Let us come to Delta State. I think Delta State takes after Lagos State in so many respects, and that was why in 2018, the Delta State government, taking the cue of the Lagos State government, equally enacted the Delta State Public and Private Properties Protection Law. However, what has not happened in Delta State is the establishment of a full-fledged agency that would manage, regulate, and license the practice of real estate in the state. We are actually looking forward to that, but I think it is more of an issue of advocacy. There are so many stakeholders in the industry. The RIDAN should be present in every state. It should be active in every state. But what we find is that there are some states where RIDAN is not fully active. We also have the NIESV, like I said earlier, the Association of Estate Agents of Nigeria, and some other bodies which should actually form a pressure group to ensure that the government takes the right step. Because what I think is that it is more of an issue of legislation. If the informal sector or within the industry, if we are trying to self-regulate, self-regulation has its limitations. because there will be vested interest, and there are those practitioners in the industry who do not want to be subject to scrutiny. They don't want to be subject to regulation. So it has to come from the government. The government needs to take the bull by the horn through our legislators, let them enact bills and laws that would ensure that the industry is well regulated. Well, like you said, sir, I would have given a little insight into the size of what we are dealing with. In Nigeria, the global real estate sector, before I talk about Nigeria, the global real estate market is valued at a staggering value of almost 637 trillion US dollars. The value in Nigeria is just about 2.3 trillion, which is around 0.35% of global real estate value. Additionally, the sector in Nigeria, the real estate sector in Nigeria, contributed a whopping 11.2 trillion in total value to the national revenue. And we also see that what the real estate sector contributes to the GDP of Nigeria is well around 6 to 7%. So this means that the industry is not an industry that should be left unregulated. The government has a lot of responsibility to step in and coordinate the system.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for those facts, and I think they're very helpful to us. And I think there's something we agree on is that the market needs to be regulated, and that's why we're here today to see which way forward, because we are very concerned. In fact, yesterday we got a report from a lady that was having issue with with her agent, with the landlord, and she was kicked out and her property thrown out. We hear about all these things every day. I am from Imo State. We are in Owerri, and trying to find a house, an accommodation in Owerri is a nightmare now, because the agents are going to jump in and mess you up. They're going to take you to even in the evil forest to go and show you a place. They will make you pay transportation every time you go with them. I mean, recently there's a video that was going on about a property that's been rented in Owerri for 700,000 naira. The agent's 100,000, the agreement 100,000, the caution 100,000. And people are asking, do these agents wake up and just put their fee on top of the thing, the property that is not yours? There should be a way this is regulated. So, Victory, now we are talking about this, and would you shed some light on some of the abuses in the sector, and how we can begin to even tackle some of these abuses? For example, I've mentioned the issue of reckless billing by agents. There's no harmony. Nobody knows. Sometimes they tell you it's 10% this, 5%. The other person comes. I mean, there is no agreement. And even if you go to the black market in Nigeria where you sell and buy dollar, there's even a little bit of agreement. I mean, people can say, "Oh, it's between 4 and 5 naira today, or between 10 and 15." But the real estate, I don't know about Abuja where you are, but where it's crazy, it's ridiculous. And so I wanted to shed light on some of these abuses. And is there anything that you guys are doing out there, or what steps, measures can we even begin to take to look at all these things? From what Rejoice has said, apart from Lagos, there's no code guiding realtors, per se, in other states of the Federation. And that makes it very difficult to control and to manage people. But be that as it may, too, I know that in some places, too, the market regulates itself depending on how it is being done. And whether those who are doing the right thing can, on their own, pick up those that are doing the things that are wrong. So what is the self-regulation for now while we work towards a government regulation? Victory. You're muted. Unmute yourself. You're muted.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I would start by saying maybe let's use the word ethical dilemmas, going forward instead of the word abuses in the system. That's because the people who perpetuate this ethical dilemmas are not professionals. They do not have in-depth knowledge of the system or the market, and that's why we have these prevailing dilemmas in the real estate market. So there are a lot of ethical dilemmas in the system, a lot of them, ranging from, non-disclosure, conflict of interest in particular, because most of these real estate agents, they engage in this business out of their own personal interest and not because of the passion they have for the system or the business. They do it because of their own personal gain, because of their own financial needs. So some of these things are, the some of these things are, what affects, certain outcomes in, real estate transactions, or, tenancies or leases, or, sale of lands or houses. A lot of conflict of interest. These guys are not professionals. They put their personal gain due to the economic pressure first before the interest of the client or the interest of the buyer. Make no mistake.
So sorry, let me not just cut you off. So let's try to be a lot more specific. Maybe I should reframe the question so that I can help you better here. So let's even begin with tenancy. And maybe we can progress to other issues. Here in the United States, where I stay, there are certain rules and regulations, we call it ethics, guiding properties that people need to move into. Are you aware of any policies, any rules, and even if it is the Lagos state owned, I mean, that could be an example if other states do not have. When I want to rent an apartment or a room or 2 rooms in Nigeria, how should the apartment be? Of what condition should it be? Because today we go in, there is no electric bulb, there is no fan, there is nothing in the room. But here in the United States, you move into a room, there's even a gas cooker there, there's a refrigerator in the place, everything you need to start life is there. You just probably move in with your own whatever cutlery and personal things, but the very day you move in and you push the button, the gas will start working. You push the button, there will be light and everything. So ideally, I mean, I'm not talking about what is realistic now, what is happening in Nigeria currently. But I know that our problem in Nigeria may not be laws. And I know that there might be a law somewhere that tells us how a property should be, what should be in a property before you move in. I'm talking about tenancy now. Because somebody was calling me yesterday and she's trying to move into a place in the north. And the place has not even, nothing is even in the place. It's not been painted, the grass has not been cut, nothing. And she's like, oh, let me pay, I can do the rest myself. How should a property, what should be the condition, the environmental, the hygienic, the whatever, should the property be ideally by Nigerian law, if any, before we move in? Let's even get to know what the standard should be. Let's not even worry about what is the situation right now.
All right, thank you very much. So ideally, the standard should be that every home that you want to rent or you want to purchase has to be in good living condition. It has to be safe for you. The structure has to be fit for purpose. But, the system is now self-regulated. It's not a standard procedure. Yes, for real estate developers, it's a standard procedure. Your property has to be to certain, requirements and all that. But if a realtor builds a house and transfers ownership to the person who buys it, then the person who buys it is now self-regulating on his property. And they now give out the properties how they did it. So realistically, there's no regulation to how the property should be. But when we come down to being good people, being human, every particular home we should be renting has to be fit for purpose. It has to look good before I even come and see it. It's just been realistic, but that's not the practice and the procedure. That's because the system is self-regulated by the owners of these properties. That's
okay.
why.
Thank you very much. Rejoice, maybe you can step in here, and because we have a standard already in Nigeria, maybe you can use that standard if you know what is in that standard, the Lagos standard. How should a property that I'm renting in Lagos or anywhere in Nigeria be? What and what should be in there? Kind of, how safe should it be? What and what should should it be? We're saying what should now. I'm not even saying what is now in Nigeria, but we want to even know what it should be, because somebody can say, okay, well, this is the law, I'm going to fight for it myself, but he has to know. Rejoice, can you jump in here a bit?
Okay, so let me start by laying a foundation. In Lagos State and in every other state in Nigeria, there's always a tenancy law or rent and property regulatory law. In Lagos State, it is called the Lagos Tenancy Law, and this law was enacted in the year 2011. Now, this law excludes some properties properties that are managed by educational institutions, university, staff quarters, hostels, and all of that. And it also does not apply to hospitals and other public and select private facilities. Now, going forward into the question that you have just raised, the law actually addresses the system of tenancy rather than the structure in terms of the physical structure. So the law tells you how much rent you should collect in advance, or how much rent you should collect in arrears. Actually, the law forbids the collection of rent in advance. You should pay for a year and then pay as you go. It forbids paying for rent for more than a maximum period of 3 years. Because at the time in Lagos, house owners, landlords were collecting rent in advance. They could tell you that for you to take possession of this building, you must pay me rent for 3 years in advance. So the law came in and regulated that, so that right now in Lagos, except you are entering into a lease transaction, a lease agreement, in the case of a lease, that's a tenancy that is above 3 years and above. But where it is not a lease, you are not required to pay excess rent in advance. The law also talks about the remedies available to landlords and tenants in case of a dispute and all of that. So to answer your question in definite terms, there is no regulated system to decide how a building should. In fact, sir, let me tell you, in Lagos State, last year there was a trending news where the Lagos State government busted a syndicate that was renting out apartments under bridges in Lagos. There were these makeshift buildings, makeshift apartments that some cabals, maybe in cahoots with security agents and some government officials, were renting out for money for valuable consideration. So in Nigeria, I do not want to say Nigeria is a jungle because this is still my country, but we find that so many things are unregulated, so many things are left unattended to. And in Nigeria, it is every man for himself. So if you see a structure, yes, if you see a structure, there is no bulb, the walls are cracking, and you decide to still rent it, the law will not penalize anybody.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's very funny though, because and I think that's a point you guys in the market should also look at, because what we are saying is that some citizens, there's a power imbalance here, right? So you see somebody looking for an apartment, but because she's desperate or he's desperate, you go to some buildings, there's no electricity in the building, the walls are cracked, I mean, it's crazy, and yet, they want to rent it out to people out there. So, and so that's a failure in the law there, and maybe that's also something to be looked into, because what I'm saying is I'm speaking the mind of the common Nigerian, and these are some of the problems that we are facing in Nigeria, especially from Imo State. I mean, some of the properties that landlords are renting to people, they're just crazy. And that's a problem. There has to be a law to protect the public from abuse, from exploitation, from landlords. And like I have said, even if the landlords don't want to do the right thing, Victory was talking about being good, and I wanted to know how good her firm is when it comes to this. So even if the landlord doesn't want to do the right thing, but you're a lawyer, and a landlord gives you a property to rent, and Victor is talking about being good, and Rejoice is talking about civilization. And I know he doesn't want to say Nigeria is a jungle, but we all can join hands and make Nigeria less a jungle. If I were to be a real estate lawyer, I would probably not manage a building that is not fit for purpose. that is not in good condition. So if you ask me to go and rent a property that is not fit for purpose, I would not do that. And so, Victory, just on a self-regulatory, and that's what I'm talking about right now. At least let's even begin from ourselves. And it's funny now. The truth is that most lawyers, most real estate, most realtors now are lawyers now. Although they are lawyers, they just come to you and issue you quick notice when you have not paid your rent and collect the money and go. They call themselves the lawyers, or they are property managers. So, and it beats my imagination that a lawyer would, after all the training in law school and everything, would agree to manage a property, would be renting out a property for a landlord that has no electricity, that has no water, that the walls are cracked and everything. Even lawyers themselves are supposed to fight for citizens somehow, even though, yes, you're in for your business, you're a lawyer, you want to make your money. So those of you that are established and are doing the right thing, is there anything you guys are doing on your own that other real estate agencies and realtors should learn and start copying? Maybe that can help while we wait for the government to enact laws. Victory.
Thank you very much, Father Godswill. So I'll be speaking for what I do as a realtor. That's because even as a lawyer, I owe my client a duty of care, to advise, to give proper advice, So I would say what I do for, clients who consult me to say, look, this is my property. I want to give it out for a lease or for a rent. The first thing you must do first is to do a property appraisal to ascertain a fair market value of that property, either it's for rent or for sale. This is because you don't want to be giving, you don't want to be doing advertisements for a property and then you're overvaluing the price of that property, because that's what we see these days. We see shabby houses that are overpriced and they don't give you the quality for which, the money that they're requesting for. So you have to do a property appraisal first to ensure that, the property that you're putting out in the market is within the, a fair market value for which you want clients to take it for. So that's first and foremost. So you have to advise your client on, after the property appraisal to say, look, this is the situation, or this is the situation in which your property is. You have to do so and so renovations if you require this certain amount from this property. Because make no mistake, as a realtor, your reputation or your brand is on the line. If, for example, you give out a property or you sell out a property that's overpriced, you take out, confidence that people have on you. Yes, you make the money, but what keeps you in the long run is the, reputation that you build for yourself and the relationships that you build along the line. So you have to do property appraisals to see if those properties fit the price that the client is requesting for them for. And I think this is an angle that a lot of realtors should look into doing. It's not just getting a property and advertising or promoting it in the market. You have to evaluate, do an appraisal of what the property is, and get a fair market value for that property before you put it out there. And also advise your clients on things they would need to do before that property goes out in the market, because as professionals or as lawyers, we have a duty of care, both to our clients and to the person who is coming into that property.
Okay, so I know the duty of care you have. I don't know who you have duty of care for when you are renting a property. Is it duty of care to the landlord or duty of care to the buyer? Or whether we should just go with buyer, be careful, beware in Nigeria. I know lawyers have fiduciary duties to their clients. But anyway, maybe what I understand from you is that you rent out the property based on the quality. You just don't really care how bad the property is, but the pricing must match how bad or how good it is, which I find a little bit.
No, I'm sorry. I don't think you got me right.
I didn't get you right. Okay, so maybe you can clarify.
Yes, you didn't get me right. I'm saying that the performance appraisal is for you to give advice. You conduct it to give proper advice on who is putting out the property in the market. So if they need to make renovations before the property goes out in the market, they will make those renovations so that we don't have substandard properties put in the market that are overpriced.
So when the landlord refuses, what do? You walk away or what?
You offer advice to the client. If they refuse to take them, then you understand, you advise them on a fair market value for looking at the condition of which
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm saying. So if you have, and Rejoice, you can also join in here. If you have a minimum requirement, which from what Rejoice has said, and you have said there's no minimum requirement in Nigeria. If you have a minimum requirement, and then you can begin to talk about pricing. So there's something we call minimum requirement. Even there's something we call human rights. You people know all that. So there's what we call basic. Okay, so if we do not have basic in a building, and a lawyer says, oh, we don't have the basic in a building, so because of that, I'm going to rent this building for 20,000 naira a month. Are you okay with that? And the client says, fine, go ahead. I'm just asking whether your fiduciary duty says no, would make you to say, no, I can't go on with this business because it doesn't meet the minimum requirements. Rejoice, I don't know whether you get what I'm talking about. Maybe you can jump in here.
Yes. Let me chip in that the relationship between a landlord and a tenant is contractual, and this implies that for every tenancy relationship, there should be a tenancy agreement signed between the landlord and the tenant. Now, in the tenancy agreement, there are certain requirements, certain covenants that should feature in such agreements. One of those covenants is that the landlord is promising or is assuring, giving an assurance or guarantee to the tenant that the property is habitable and tenantable. But in practice or in principle, some of these things are just in paper. But there is that requirement for every tenancy agreement that the landlord must give an assurance to the tenant that the property is tenantable and habitable. The landlord also has a covenant, an obligation to repair the property, whether during the tenancy or even before the tenancy. This is also subjective because if there is a breach, the tenant has a right either to enforce or not to enforce because it is a contractual agreement between the parties. The landlord also has a duty to insure the property. That's in Lagos State. The Lagos State Tenancy Law 2011 obligates the landlord to insure the property from fire and some other hazards. Now, when you flip the coin, the tenant also has his or her own duties. And one of those duties in relation to the concern you raised about the physical features or the structural features of a property that is about to be rented out, the tenant has a duty to keep the premises in good and tenantable condition, with the exception of reasonable wear and tear. So if as a tenant, I have taken up your property, Reverend Father, to rent for a period of 1 year, and when you gave me the property, the bulbs were in good working condition, the sockets were in good working condition, the house was well painted. I have an obligation as a tenant to ensure that I do not derogate from the soundness of the building. I have a duty to maintain the premises or the facility during the period of my tenancy. So to an extent, we might not conclude essentially that the tenancy space is totally unregulated, but I would only say that it is subjective because what affects me may not affect the other person. And if I feel that the landlord is breaching my rights or is not fulfilling his own part of the bargain, I still have a choice either to enforce or not to enforce. And this is where realtors come in. When a realtor who is a professional real estate practitioner is involved in a tenancy transaction, there are minimum requirements that he must enforce. So if a lawyer has been given a power of attorney to manage a building or a premises on behalf of a landlord, he or she has the duty to ensure the enforcement of this covenant, not leaving it to chance or not leaving it at the whims and caprices of the landlord. So I would agree with you that more has to be done. but it doesn't mean that right now there is no procedure for mediating when some of these issues arise.
Okay, thank you so much. Your last sentence, is very instructive, and that's, what I was looking for is the duty of the realtor. This program is about the realtors. It's not even about the tenants. It's about the professional, the code of ethics for realtors. What should realtors be doing? And I like the fact that you said that the realtor has a duty to enforce the covenant. And well, I'm sorry, that's not what we're seeing today. I mean, I know a case recently that happened. It's about an employee in my office that got a place, and I mean, the light was not working. The former tenant owed a lot of money, and the agent or realtor, promised everything that the light would start working, and they're talking to NEPA and everything. Now the lady moved in, and now when you call the agent or the realtor, he said, "Go and talk to the landlord." And that's where I'm coming from, the ethics of things. And I love the fact that you're talking about the covenant, and the covenant should reflect minimum requirements. And it is the duty of the realtor to enforce what is in the covenant. And the realtor, I want to add, and I don't know whether you agree or disagree, in the first instance should not even let the tenant have the building if those minimum requirements are not available. But we know that realtors and agents want money, and they will say anything, they will say anything in the world to just get the tenant to pay. And once the tenant pays, that's it. You come to them again, they don't know you, just like buying something from Ariaba and trying to return it the next day. They will say it didn't come to their shop. And so it's unfortunate, but I'm glad you're saying that that's what realtors should be doing. And as you start developing your code of ethics, you should have some of these things in your code of ethics in black and white, that a realtor should ensure that a property that she's managing or he's managing for a landlord meets minimum requirement, whatever that minimum requirement may be, and that minimum requirement must be enforced, and the realtor insists on that. But let's talk about pricing again. There's this concern about various kinds of fees that people charge, that realtors or real estate people charge when they are trying to rent out the property to somebody. Where, for example, where I come from, we pay agreements, we pay agents, we pay a portion. And I have spoken to a lawyer before, and he told me that, the lawyers had an agreement on how much percentage they would charge. I don't know whether that is true or false, and that you can't even charge lower. But now nobody knows what the fee is. Nobody knows what the percentage is. And should we have agents different fee, agreement different fee? I don't get it. So can we jump in here? What is the ideal situation? Again, we can go back to the tenancy law, or we can go back to the Lagos State Act to see what should be the ideal situation here. Let's even not worry about what is going on now, because I'm sure that different things are going on in different states. Rejoice, can you speak to this briefly?
Okay, so I'm going to have to make reference to the Legal Practitioners Remuneration Order 2023. This order regulates the scale of charges that legal practitioners should charge in the practice of their profession. Now, specifically when it comes to tenancies and leases, the order specifies a minimum percentage that should be charged when it comes to the preparation of documentation for real estate transactions, especially for tenancies and leases. Now, where the annual rental value is around 5 million, between 5 million to 10 million. I'm trying to see if I can make a proper reference to it. The legal practitioners are required to charge a maximum of 10%. 10%. But what we find in the industry generally with the quacks and the professionals is that most landlords charge a flat rate of 10%. And what is even more annoying is the fact that when they charge these legal fees, they do not actually consult professionals, I mean legal practitioners in this case, to prepare those tenancy agreements. So they charge those amounts, go on the internet to download the template, sometimes in agreement, in cahoots with these unregulated agents. They prepare something, they can just prepare a form, and then they give it to the tenants to sign. In most cases, the general public are not even aware of these things. They do not know that the law mandates that any transaction relating to buildings or properties must be documented, and it must be done by a lawyer. By a lawyer. This is very, very important. I would give myself as an example. In Lagos, when I newly got married in 2021, I had to get a 2-bedroom apartment. And of course, I paid the rent, I paid the agency fee of 10%, I paid the legal fee of 10%. And of course, I was expecting to get a tenancy agreement. But this began to drag. The landlord would tell me he's waiting for the lawyer. Then one day, suddenly, he just
network.
He manufactured a piece of
All right, I think we're having network issues there. We'll see how it goes.
get lawyer. I would not know how much he paid the lawyer, but eventually I got my tenancy agreement. So by way of advocacy, we want to let the public know that in every tenancy transaction, especially where you have paid the 10% agreement fee, insist and ensure that you get a properly drafted tenancy agreement by a lawyer, which you can then execute, of course, in conjunction with your own lawyer. Let me also add that because of the economic situation in Nigeria, a lot of things are happening. So because the purchasing power is dropping, there's inflation, everything is expensive, whatever people are able to get, even if it doesn't meet minimum requirement or standards, they are forced to take it. So this even goes beyond the industry. The economy needs to grow. There has to be improvements in our economic system to give people higher purchasing power or value so that we can begin to insist on basic requirements and standards.
Okay, thank you so much, Rejoice. Victory, when you are a lawyer and you are a realtor, and so do you still have to charge agent and agreement fee? Because you're the lawyer drafting the agreement, you are also the agent finding the property and connecting the landlord and the tenant. Shouldn't you charge only one fee instead of agent and agreement at the same time? Victory.
Yeah, so ideally,
you're putting Victory on the hot seat.
so So ideally, you're supposed to, if you're acting as a realtor, you take your fees as a realtor. That's ideally what it is. But sometimes in practice, people play both sides. They act as lawyers and they also act as the realtors. But this I would say this is not completely good. This is because it still boils down to conflict of interest. If you have to, a lot of times because of the economic situation and the personal pressures, people act both ways, and some of these things do not help facilitate smooth and efficient sale or tenancy transactions, because people are persons are looking for money and things like that. So ideally, it is better and more efficient to act on one side. If you're acting as a lawyer, act as a lawyer. If you want to act as a realtor, act as a realtor and take fees as a realtor.
Okay, so here in the United States, where I live, we don't know whether a lawyer is involved in rental property. We don't know whether an agent is involved in rental property. We only know the realtor, and the realtor does everything. I believe that in every real estate office, or every realtor has some kind of lawyer that works with him or her. And so nobody tells you agent and agreement. You just pay what you're supposed to pay, and it is now up to the agent or the realtor you're working with to make sure you get the appropriate papers. So it's just like going to a hospital in an ideal state, and you are sick, and the doctor is checking you out. You have stomach problem, and you have knee problem, and the hospital has a doctor that is specialist in stomach problem, has a hospital doctor specialist in knee problem. They all check your own bills, and then they charge you. and then the knee doctor will come and check you out, the stomach doctor will come and check you out, but you get one bill when you leave. So I was wondering why we can't have such a situation, especially for you guys that have your firm. Why can't we have a bill for the tenant to pay, and then you figure it out in your firm there, what you give the lawyer and what you take as an agent? It's a business you're doing. I mean, Rejoice, you can jump in here because it confuses us, the common people. You say, oh, agent and agreement fee, the lawyer will get it, the agent will get that. If it's an agent or a realtor, it's a good business. He handles all that from the scratch for you. He gets the lawyer. Maybe he has a lawyer in his firm that does the writing, or a lawyer that they work with. But they make the tenant pay just one fee for that transaction, and you're good to go. We shouldn't be knowing all this. This is for lawyer, this is for agent, or this is for no. I mean, I stand to be disproved, but that's how it is in civilized nations, where, like in America, where I live, where I'm talking to you from right now. So that's how it is. So why can't we achieve such a system in Nigeria rather than confusing us with different fees? Rejoice.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Father. I would say that, like I mentioned in my introductory statements, the system is still largely unregulated, except for pockets of legislations and regulations here and there. But when it comes to charges, we now begin to look into the professionals, specific professionals that are involved in the real estate value chain. So when it comes to tenancy or leases or conveyances, maybe in the case of an outright sale of a piece of land or a property, built property, there are certain professionals that, whether they are realtors or not, they have to be involved. So, taking a lawyer, for example, I am a lawyer working in the real estate industry. There are lawyers that do not have anything to do with real estate other than maybe preparation of documentation. So, to that extent, those lawyers, when they come in contact with a real estate transaction, they are also guided and regulated by existing rules and regulations or scales of charges in their respective professions. So, if a lawyer wants to prepare documentation for a conveyance is when someone is selling a piece of property outrightly and there has to be a deed of assignment. The lawyer who will prepare that document is statutorily bound by the rules of professional conduct existing in his own profession to charge a certain fee. So we cannot altogether leave it at the discretion of realtors to coordinate and to manage. All I see or all I want is for more coordination to ensure that more licensed people, more professionals are the ones who are facilitating and brokering transactions like this to avoid situations where quacks are the ones taking dues and fees that are supposed to go to professionals. To a great extent, what is being charged may not be too outrageous because in some cases, where professionals are involved, where you involve a realtor can actually negotiate these fees. If, for example, I am buying a property worth 100 million, I can decide to negotiate uh, what agency fee I will pay. It doesn't have to be 10%. It's not cast in stones. So realtors will play a very strategic role if they are involved in transactions like this. They can actually negotiate. They can broker lesser fees, lesser charges on behalf of their clients. However, in doing this, they must ensure that they are not violating existing rules and regulations affecting some of the professionals, other professionals who are involved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. There's quite a lot of odd things I see in the Nigerian market. I think that the consumer tends to suffer so much in Nigeria. And, you know, here in the United States, when you rent a house, nobody talks about commission, you know, I don't know what they call it, agency agreement and all those things. We don't even hear about it. They will just tell you that the property is $1,000. That is it. I guess there's a way the realtor figures it out with the landlord, but nobody talks about my percentage, 10%, this, 10, you don't hear about, nobody hears about it. I've never heard about it before. I've rented properties here. The realtor and the landlord, they know how they figured it out, but they cannot tell you that the property is $1,000, it's $2,000. That is it. And if you agree to it, you pay $1,000, you go. Now, whether out of that $1,000, the realtor gets $200 or $100 from the landlord, we just don't get to know about it at all. The common renter does not get to know about it at all. So it's kind of like sometimes weird how, the realtor wants to get his own money from the tenant, and then the lawyer wants to get his own money from the tenant, and then the landlord wants to also get his own money from the tenant. Again, speaking to the fact that the market is not well coordinated, as you have said. If it is well coordinated, we, the renters, we don't care. What we care about is that this property is 700,000, it's 900,000, it's 1 million. Period. We pay it to you, to the realtor. The realtor will settle the lawyer and settle the landlord. Case closed, chicken. But anyway, until we get to that point, I want to speak to another issue that Nigerians worry about. When you rent a property to somebody, what duties do the landlords have regarding to the property? Now, for example, are there things that go bad in the house that the landlord should take care of? Or once you move into the house, no matter what it is, whatever goes bad in the house, you take responsibility for it. NEPA light gets bad, or wire gets burnt, or something gets spoiled, transformer gets bad, tenants will start contributing money for it. Something gets spoiled in the room, the bathtub gets bad, landlord will start, tenants will start contributing money for it. The ceiling pulls down, the tenant will have to fix it. What should tenants fix in the house, and what should landlords fix when you have rented a property to a tenant? Victory, you may want to speak to this. I mean, if there is any regulation around it anyway, but if there is none, that's fine.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I'm audible enough.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you very much. I think just as Mr. Alabi said, it's dependent on your agreement with the landlord. But generally, the property has to be, in a clean and a safe environment. Basic repairs and maintenance are supposed to be in that property. The landlord must make necessary repairs to keep the premises in a livable condition. What do we mean by livable condition? Fixing plumbings, electrical issues, some of these things, painting the outsides of the compounds or the building, these are general things, providing a water system in the property, ensuring there's electricity in that property. These are basic provisions that landlords should offer tenants. That's why before you sign a tenancy agreement or let's say a provisional letter of offer, they have to state, certain things, the landlord or the owner of the property is going to ensure that it's there basically before you move into that property.
So like the sumo in the building, the sumo that pumps water spoils, who fixes it?
Let me add something to that.
Okay,
let me add, because this sumo you just mentioned now, you are striking a very painful chord, because it's something that I am experiencing right now. When I moved to Asaba earlier this year, I used to be in Lagos. I was transferred to a regional office in Asaba. I had to get an apartment, and I was fortunate to get a 2-bedroom duplex, which was very expensive. I do not want to go into that. And to go back to the issue of fees, I paid almost 50% of the rent, slightly lesser than 50% of the rent in additional charges. There was a caution, there was the security, and whatever, so many ancillary bills. But because I wanted the house, it was my taste, I was forced to pay. Now, going to the issue of who does what, whether the landlord repairs this or provides the sumo, it's more of a contractual relationship. So parties decide on what works best for them. Now, in my tenancy agreement, there is a provision that says that in the event that the water pump has an issue, I think maybe the landlord already envisaged that. He actually incorporated a clause to protect himself. And the agreement says that when such happens, the tenants will contribute money to fix the sumo. So when we had that issue, we have a WhatsApp forum. The tenants, it's a block of 10 duplexes, and we have this WhatsApp forum. Some were saying we need to call the landlord. He needs to come and fix this. I said, guys, can we all go to our tenancy agreement? Let us see what the tenancy agreement says. So it's not about emotions or what should be. It's about what is written, what is agreed. So because we had all signed the agreement and we had all agreed to be bound by the content of the agreement, we actually had no other option than to contribute money to do all of that. Now, before I round this up, I want to go back again to the Lagos State Property Protection Law. In that law, Lagos State Tenancy Law, rather, the law states that the landlord has a duty to repair the structural components of the building. According to that law, the Lagos State Tenancy Law 2011, the landlord has the obligation to repair and maintain external and common areas of the rental property, while the tenant, on the other hand, has the obligation to repair and maintain internal repairs, minor wears and tears, such as if the bulb gets spoiled, you don't expect to have to call the landlord to come and change your bulbs for you. There are certain things, minimum repairs that the tenant can handle on his own side. But the bottom line is that it is still a matter of agreement. If in the agreement it is stated that the landlord will provide fuel to pump the water, if the light is bad, the landlord must provide generator. As long as it is written and it is agreed, I don't think the parties would have any problem. So the issue, the bane now is that most people do not have agreement. So when something goes wrong, they do not even know where to go to. They don't know where to start from. So I want to encourage Nigerians who are listening to us, whenever you are renting a property or you are buying a house or whatever it is, make sure that all the terms are properly spelled out. And this is the place of the realtor. The realtor has professional experience and training to know what should be incorporated in your agreements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I love your last sentence, the place of the realtor. Unfortunately, we don't have much of them, where we have agents everywhere. So, and I'm just imagining an uneducated man looking for a building, and then he falls into the hands of these agents, and he doesn't even look at the agreement when they give it to him. He doesn't even know what is in there. And then he signs it and calls them on the phone. Have you signed the agreement? They have signed it, and then they send it, and you know how that happens, right? So that is also very clear. I mean, what you have said is very clear. Unfortunately, I don't know whether tenants pay attention to those or whether they don't. And I know that sometimes too, the landlords don't keep their own part along the line. Are those agreements, they are actionable in court, right? Yeah, they are actionable, right?
Yes, they are.
They are actionable.
Yes, they are. You can institute an action in court for breach of contract.
Yeah, but sometimes it takes forever before you get judgment. Sometimes that's
a conversation for another day.
That's another. So let's talk about final thing before we round up today. Is quick notice.
Sorry to cut you short. Before we move forward, I just wanted to bring up a question. I feel a lot of tenants would have. A lot of times people move into properties without ensuring the landlords do some of these things. Usually, before you move in, you will see the state of the structure, make requests, from the landlords to the property to do some of those things. Some people do not make those requests for those, repairs to be done before they move in. And make no mistake, once you move into that property, you do not, practically, you do not have those rights to request for those things if they are not embedded in your contract. So it's important that tenants ensure that, before they move in, they have an agreement that the landlord will fix some of these, basic things before they move in.
Okay, so but that's true. I think we need to strengthen the real estate industry in Nigeria so that because where now most times you don't even see the landlord. You don't even see the landlord until you move in. There's somebody who claims to be an agent or a lawyer, and is the person that you are making the request from. And then they will always tell you, oh, they're going to do it, they're going to do it. Of course, you know how it is, especially if you're under pressure to get a place. I was just wondering whether it is the tenants. When you say make a request, they're making this request from the realtor, right? To ensure that these things are fixed before you move in, right? And when there's no
Exactly.
realtor, then you're making the request from the agent. And that is why we need
Exactly.
to get rid of the
Yes.
agent or train the agents to become good realtors. I don't know which one that works, but either way, we have to be able, because we don't think that the agents do these things, and they don't do them because they are not established. I don't really know how many realtors or real estate companies we have in Owerri. Almost everybody we talk to at some point in time is an agent. Some, they don't have office, they don't have anything, they just call them on the phone, they will just come into your place and everything. So make sure what is in the agreement is fixed, but you interface. Like when we rent properties, you don't see the landlord, you just see the realtor. He comes in, walks you around, shows you everything. You point out things you don't like. The realtor says, okay, I'll get them all fixed. And he comes back and tells you everything is all fixed. And you go in and pay. So how can we start working towards that standard, if I may ask? Or is it an impossible goal to be achieved? And how can those of you in the real estate industry, those who are doing it right, rejoice, you have had a lot of experiences. So I believe that you should be advocating so much and bringing your colleagues together in data to say, guys, look, we need to sanitize this business. Those agents that are doing the wrong thing are not going to be the ones to sanitize the business because it is for their own advantage. They are thriving in chaos. But if we have a good system, then it'll be sanitized. I mean, most of the people that rent properties, realtors here in America, they are not lawyers. Many of them are not lawyers, but they can be trained and they can be meant to go for some training, and there could be some rules and regulations guiding it. How are the established realtors? How are the established realtors, pushing for these things? Because to me, I feel like the agents are spoiling the markets and making realtors, all of them, look bad. I know that the big ones, they still maintain their integrity and reputation, but everybody should be able to have a good service from the realtor. Whether I'm renting a room for 300,000 a year or I'm renting a duplex for 5 million, the realtor is there to serve both the big and the small, the low, the poor, and the rich. So how can you guys, join hands together and come together and begin to sanitize the system? Sometimes I don't like to leave things to the public because, it's always the leaders that will have to bring the change. We can always tell the public, do this, do that, do that, do that, but when you are in their shoes, it's not easy. Remember, Rejoice, you were a lawyer when you rented in Lagos and you saw how difficult it was and all those things. Then let alone an average Nigerian that is not a lawyer and that is just a trader that doesn't have all that power. So how can we begin to sanitize the system and provide some ethics, code of ethics to regulate the thing? Here in America, a realtor has to take about 13 credit hours on ethics before he or she can be certified to be a realtor. Why don't we have such trainings and certifications for our members, for those in the system, so that we can begin to make a difference? So your final words on this, Rejoice, because we are out of time now. It's almost an hour and a half since we've been here. And maybe we can have more conversation in the future because we get a lot of reports all the time. In fact, much of the reports we get in our organization, they have to do with people dealing with landlords, agents, properties, and everything. I think the Benue State government recently passed a law against matching grant. I didn't even go into buying land because if you go to that place, it's crazy because you buy a land, you have to pay matching grant, you have to pay the community people, you have to buy wine, you have to buy drink, and you keep asking what is going on here. So Rejoice, what are your final words and what do you think would be what can be done to start sanitizing the system? Rejoice? You are muted, Rejoice. You're muted. I think you're muted.
Apologies, I didn't know I was muted. So in closing my session today, I'll take a cue from the topic of today's conversation, Nigerian Realtors and the Code of Professional Ethics for Realtors. First, the system needs to be organized. We need to have those who are professionals coming together to form pressure groups to ensure that the right thing is done. We need the government to also step in because the core mandate of every responsible government is the safety of lives and properties, and safeguarding the purchase, the acquisition, or the sale of properties in Nigeria is also the responsibility of the government. So we want to call on the government, we want to call on professional associations who are in the real estate value chain to step up the game and ensure that there's a code of ethics properly documented, and anybody who wants to practice real estate in any form or in any shade should be mandated to get licensed. By the time we begin to put some of these things in place, it's not going to be a day's journey. I'm not even sure it's going to be a decade's journey. It's a long journey, but we need to start all the same. We need to borrow a cue from Lagos and other jurisdictions that are getting it right to see how the industry can be more sanitized.
Thank you so much, Rejoice. Victory, what are your final words? How can we move forward? How can we sanitize the industry?
I would say, starting from ourselves as realtors, ethical practices are not just requirements, they are a choice. And these choices define who we are and how the industry is perceived. By choosing to act ethically, we contribute, fairly and more transparently and more reliably to the real estate market in Nigeria. Let's take this opportunity to recommit ourselves to ethical excellence. Let us lead by example, demonstrating that integrity is the key to success. And together we can all build the real estate industry of our dreams and be proud of of our clients holding us to our trustworthiness and our colleagues respecting us, and also looking back with pride to the successes that we have accomplished. We need to educate ourselves and our teams regularly on the latest best practices, not just in Nigeria but in other places. Engage in discussions like this about ethics with our peers, and foster a culture of transparency and accountability, basically. So that'll be all for me.
Thank you so much, Victory Kena, property consultant and legal advisor at Casa Victoria. It's been a great time with you talking about real estate and rent tenancy and all that stuff today. And I hope that Nigerians have learned a lot from your wealth of experience. And I hope that people would know better, and also your colleagues in the industry will begin to do it better. Thank you, Rejoice. Rejoice Alabi, Director of Admin and Operations, P1 Plus Limited. I think we have P1 in Imo State too. And
Yes.
so I hope one of the things I would say is, I think there are two ways to solve a problem. One, we can solve a problem through legislation, but also we can also solve a problem by doing it right and taking the market by storm, and then keeping out those who are doing the wrong thing naturally. So for example, if P1 in Imo State decides to set up a robust, even if it is not what they do, I'm sure, I know sometimes they do more of buying houses, selling houses, but they can set up a robust tenant agent system in their organization. And they have these agents that are trained, and they establish a code of ethics for their own agents. And then they have identifiable office where they are. And they can actually use the existing agents, clean them up, train them, and monitor them. And then let them be the ones renting properties to people. And so people know, for example, in Imo State, that, if you go to P1, the agents there will do the right thing for you. They will make sure they do the right agreement for you. They will charge the right fee. mean that you will see that naturally people will now stop going to those quack agents and start coming to P1. And eventually P1 can have as many agents as possible, but ensuring that those agents are doing the right thing. And people will always say, if you want to rent a house, go to those people. They may charge you a little higher, but they'll get you what you want. They have peace of mind and everything. But I think that most of the realtors or real estate companies in wherever, for example, they focus more on buying houses or buying land and building houses. I've not seen some good effort, and it's a market opportunity. We may not look at it that much. It might not give us, 100 million in commission for one building, but it can grow up. And some of these agents, maybe some of them might be open to training. Maybe some of them might be open to guidance. I have a vision. I have a dream of an office, where we have, somebody looking for a house can walk in and say, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom apartment. Can you find me that? And then the agent takes it upon himself and does what is right and charges you, you pay. And then you just go rather than just, so I don't know. I mean, that's a wide vision. It may not be financially as profitable as selling a property for 50 million or 100 million, but that could also be one way P1 and all of you that are established can begin to sanitize the system. Once people find out that there's an office doing it right, people will be going there. And probably that's how they can kill and stop the other agents while we work towards the government making the law. And who knows, maybe the government can look at what that office is doing and decide to model a law to support that office. Thank you so much. P1, an idea you can run with, you can present to your management.
Yes, thank you, sir, for that recommendation. We are going to run with it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming on this show. We appreciate all you have done and keep up the good work. And see you next time. We're definitely going to bring you back.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, bye.
Bye-bye.
We go one.